Alright everybody, welcome to a fan requested video where you guys have asked me, Matt, you've ridden all three of the new sleds now, which one do you like the best? So let's dive into that a little bit. I had problems finding like an objective video where it wasn't in like a rep's pocket or something like that doing the review. So I've been on all three. I'll admit I haven't been on the Polaris all that much, but I've been around it. I've seen what it can do firsthand, and I had spent like a little bit of time on it. So sit back, relax, open yourself up a nice cool can of cheap Bush, and let's talk a little bit of snowmobile. All right, I'm gonna be objective as possible, try to keep this video to 10 minutes or shorter. It seems like every time people start talking about their sleds, it turns into like a pissing match of what sled is better. Who can go further, who can do it the best. It's just like everything else. It's like Xbox or PlayStation, what truck you like, Ford, GM, Dodge. I mean, everybody always says one's the best. So what I'm going to be doing here today is I'm going to be objective as possible. I'm not in anybody's pocket. I've done reviews on the Alpha, and after a season on the Alpha, I certainly had some critiques for that chassis. So everybody wants to be on a team. Everybody wants their brand to be the best. Everybody wants their brand to go the furthest. But I'm not a brand loyal kind of guy. It's like, I like what I like, and that's what I end up getting. And I get that maybe some people have like that hate on for a certain brand. Maybe they had a bad experience with a dealer. Maybe they had bad experience with warranty. Maybe they bought a sled that had brand new plastics, looked great, but it had a bunch of gremlins. Maybe they just bought one of those Friday sleds. Maybe they just bought a lemon. So they have this hate for this company. And I understand that. I get that. And for that reason, I'm not going to talk about like what problems a lot of these sleds have. Like every brand kind of has its issue, it seems like. But for this video, I'm just going to be talking about the handling of the sled, what I liked, what I didn't like, some of the features, some of what I thought was a little strange on the sleds, and you can decide for yourself. Like, this is basically my objective opinion. That sounds kind of weird to say because it contradicts itself, but let's get things started off. All right, we're going to start off with the sled I'm probably the most familiar with, I'd say, which is the Alpha 1. So I spent all last year on an Alpha 1. I enjoyed the sled a lot. It had track speed. Like, that sled would chew its way to the top of just about everything. And I think that's what it had on everybody else, was its track speed. The clutching, I loved on it. It was super smooth. It has that team clutching with that collar bearing in between. So the bottom end was awesome, especially if you compare it to some of their older engines, their older clutching setups. The bottom end power, you got bottom end power, you got bottom end torque. That sled had it all as far as like the power band and the power range. It had everything, and I loved that a lot about it. One thing I really liked about it was side hilling across deep trenches. That thing, like with the flex in the track, usually you're side hilling and you come in, oh, there's a big trench coming and we got to get ready for her, and bam, you bounce through it and you try to hang on and okay, we got to go up still. And that, the Alpha wouldn't do that. And it was because when you hop your ski across the trench, there isn't a whole lot of weight on your skis. Usually you can just hop them across, but even if there's a really deep hole or something like that going up the hill and you're going across it, that track would like flex around it. It was cool. That's where it really would shine, was side hilling across those hard and deep trenches. It would just like, they weren't even there. It would glide right over it. It was cool. I really like that feature on it. It had that low attack angle on the track with the drop chain cases, which actually caused it to like, you could climb up on pretty much anything. Like even when you thought you were stuck, you just chew a little bit, it would just pop over the top. And all sleds are doing that now, so that's not specific just to the Alpha. The Chaos is a little bit different setup, but like I said, I'm gonna try not to get off on tangents here. This is gonna be a weird one, but I really enjoyed the way that Alpha handled on the trail. It was a little strange at first, but after the second day on the trail, I really enjoyed that Alpha rail on the trail. You'd think it had a little bit of body roll, which was kind of weird, but after you learned how to fight that, The Alpha was actually a lot of fun on the trail. I really enjoyed it. And that's not something you'd think coming from that monorail skid. Okay, I can go into like switches and buttons and handlebar configuration and this and that and the other thing, but I'm gonna try to keep things pretty basic as far as handling, like just handling and power and what I liked about the ride. I'm not gonna go into every little detail. What I didn't like about the Alpha, it wasn't so obvious on that deep winter snow or even that mashed potato snow. It was more in that spring snow with, you know, you got like a couple inches of snow on top of almost like an ice layer or a harder packed layer, or the snow's really thick. It seemed like that washout was a real thing. Like, it was like driving a drift car up the mountain, man. Like, Ben was behind me once and he said it was comical watching me hill climb on that thing on that harder packed snow, because washout, it is a real thing, especially when you get your track up to speed. This one's kind of a weird one. The spindles on the front, I feel like they're just doing what they can with this chassis to extend its life. So they, like those old cube, those pyramidal spindles that they had, so they just push that wishbone spindle on the front, and they're just doing that because they're trying to get as much length out of this chassis as possible. So it's kind of it is an afterthought for sure, but it seems to be working. I don't really have any complaints about it. Overall, great sled. Enjoyed it quite a lot, actually. It was a really good sled. All right, let's move on to the Polaris Patriot 850. Okay, I gotta admit, this was the one I spent the least amount of time on, but you know, Sean does have one in the fleet, so I can say a few things about it for sure. What I enjoyed about it was how high you actually sat on that sled. Like, once you're up on top of it, like, you're at a very high place and you can kind of look down and you can feel what needs to be done more intuitively and more directly before you need to go in and do it. Like, you can see that once you're up that high, you don't need to pull over as hard on that sled to get it to go where you want to go. And that's actually what I liked about it, was that high approach angle. It didn't feel like you were sitting in a hole. You felt like you were on top of the sled. And I like that about it. That 850, like, especially compared to their old 800 engine, which was underpowered, you can say this and that about it, but that engine was underpowered. It wouldn't keep up with the Skidoo 800s or the Suzuki 800s at the time in the Cats. So that 850 that they have in it now, great upgrade. Tons of power. It's got that full throttle range. You got torque at all ranges. I think the number one thing I liked about that sled, though, was that it felt the most familiar to me. When you're switching off from a Cat to a Polaris, there isn't really a whole lot of learning or adjustment that needs to be done. You basically just hop on one, and even I felt like after getting on the 850 Patriot, was that, oh, this is like riding a Cat. I've ridden one of these before. Like, this is like riding the Alpha. Like, it's pretty much the same thing. They're very comparable sleds when it comes to handling. Once you get it into that side hilling, you get climbing, you get some ski lift. For me, it was very predictable because I knew what the sled was gonna do, and I think that's part of the reason why I liked it, is because it was familiar. Of course, there's a bunch of different track options there. You can go with the 2.6 with the belt drive, or you can go with the 3-inch, but it does chew. Like, that engine and that track chews actually impressively well. I was very impressed, and it actually went a little better than I thought it was gonna go. So yeah, very impressive there too. It is a good sled. So what I didn't like about it, the clutching was not quite as responsive. It's a little petty thing, but if you're gonna compare it to an Alpha or even a Do, the clutching was not quite as responsive, especially when you compare it to the Alphas, because of the clutch, the team clutching setup. They got the team driven and the team drive clutches, and I think having those working in conjunction with each other made it smoother, definitely smoother on the takeoff, and that's where I feel it. Not to say that it wasn't smoother than before, but comparing the two, it wasn't as smooth a clutching. I don't really have a whole lot bad to say about this machine. One thing I'm going to pick on a little bit, and I know I said I wouldn't do this too much, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, was that the throttle block itself, or I don't know, I think it was the block, I don't think it was the cable. The throttle block itself seemed prone to getting snow jammed in it, especially after a roll. The throttle would stick sometimes, and I don't know if that's a throttle block design, but I definitely have seen it happen a lot more than I saw with the other brands, especially after a little bit of a roll, or if it was an icy day. It definitely seemed to be prone to sticking open. So I mean, in conjunction with that, is that they're not putting factory tethers on their units. Now, they're the only company right now not putting the factory tethers on their mountain units, and I'm just kind of asking why. Like, that's such a... I wear a tether religiously. Like, that's... If I'm on the hill, like, I have my tether on, and it's a piece of safety equipment, so, you know, wear it. All right, let's get on to the black sheep of the family. Let's get on to the Skidoo Expert. The power, the clutching, all super smooth. Loved it, especially at takeoff, and that's where it really matters. I think this is actually why I enjoyed so much of my time on it, was because on that machine, you're a lot further forward on it than you are a Cat or a Polaris. Like, when you switch off from the Cat to the Polaris, it's like, this is a very similar machine. Then you get on the Do, and just standing there without even taking it for a ride, you're like, this is gonna be different. And before even moving, you're like, this is gonna take a little bit of practicing. You're a lot further forward, but for me, being this, like, I'm only 180, I'm not even 180 pounds anymore. I'm freaking like 170 pounds now. Like, I lost a bunch of weight, thank you very much. So I'm 170 pounds with my gear on, like, probably not, maybe 200 pounds, if that, maybe not even that much. I felt like I had more control over it, being that far, much further forward on it. And a lot of Skidoo's test riders are guys that are my size, so it's built for a guy like me, and I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. I didn't have to override the sled. If I needed it to go somewhere, I didn't have to like crank on it. I just kind of turned the skis a little bit. If I wanted to go off this way, I just kind of turned the skis to the left a little bit and just lean, and it just did exactly what I wanted it to. It just came right over. And the nice part about that for me was that I didn't have to override it. But when I did need to override it, I could override it. Because us Cat and Polaris guys, traditionally, we got one arm and one leg dangling out. So on the Do, I didn't need to do that. And I think it's built for a rider that's my size. Because even though, like, physically, it's a larger sled, it did a very good job at feeling small. And as ugly as I think that 850, that Gen 4 chassis is, that sled was a lot of fun. Especially when you're talking about the Expert, the playfulness of that sled is absolutely phenomenal. I didn't think that, like, they got like that. When you see those Instagram videos or YouTube videos of people catwalking, like, straight down, like, flat, and they're doing it on a Do, it's like, my cat won't do that. I can see how they do it on an Expert. It's freaking easy. You got the quick adjust limiter strap, so all you got to do is just crank on that thing a little bit, and that front end will just, like, pop out, or sorry, loosen. If you loosen off that limiter strap, that front end just pops up. Like, I thought I was stuck at one point, and I was like, I'm lining up to get stuck, and I'm not going to be able to pull out of where I need to be just because my footing wasn't right. And I'm not a professional rider by any means, but it just kind of went around, and it ended up going, like, right out of the turn, and I was super happy with it. The playfulness of that Expert is phenomenal. I had a great time on it. The shot was cool. I mean, that's kind of whatever. I don't mind pull starting my sled. That's not a big deal, but it was cool. If you don't know what a shot system is, it's basically this electric start system. This is a really dumbed down version of it. This is an electric start system that works without an electric starter, and it uses, oh God, I'm gonna get this butchered. It basically uses the mag to turn over the engine. That's a really dumbed down idea of what's happening, but that's basically what's happening. There's way better videos. Go look at a shot video if you're not sure what it is. It's cool. So there were definitely things that I didn't enjoy about this sled, but I think they will come with time, except for one. This one was, I understand why people do this. Okay, so the T-motion. I didn't enjoy the T-motion. There was washout in the weirdest places, so I understand why people delete the T-motion. And where did I really feel it? When I was going down a hill, and instead of just plateauing out, I had to make a turn and then head back up the hill. That's when I felt, it wasn't like super serious, but that's when I felt it. It was just like a little bit of a kick around in the back of the sled. And it's just like, what was that? Was that the T-motion like causing the track to slide across the snow? It's like, that was weird. So I understand why people delete that. The other thing, and this would just take some getting used to, is the wider foot stance of that sled. And it's got a wider foot stance for two reasons. The track is physically 1 inch wider, and I think that's why it climbs so much better. Because it certainly outclimbed the Polaris, and I can't even compare it against like my old cat, but it would probably outclimb an Alpha. But your leg stance actually ends up being a lot wider on it. That track is 1 inch wider, and then on the left side of the sled, you have your brake housing. So that's another inch. And on the right-hand side of your sled, you have your chain case. So that's another inch. So it actually ends up being about 3 inches wider of stance that you're standing on as compared to a cat or a Polaris, which was kind of strange. I think it just takes some getting used to. You end up standing like right on top of where the drivers are, and even a little bit forward of the drivers. And I think that's what like made me able to do a little bit of a turn, and it would just go up side hill across the hard pack and go over the ruts, not a problem. All right, guys, that's all I got for this video. What's the verdict? There's no bad sled on the mountain. It's like, ride what you like no matter what you buy. And this is the great thing, like sleds, especially in the mountain segment, have come so far in the past 20 years. Like you have Cat competing against Polaris, competing against Dew. Usually Dew's the first one to do things. And everybody's competing with each other, so every consumer ends up with a really good sled. And I think that's awesome. You can't buy a bad sled right now. Like this is just me critiquing them and what I felt about each. So I had fun on all of them. They were all great. All right, guys, if everybody right now goes down to the link below and donates to Patreon $1, there'll be a new skidoo in the fleet. There'll be a new snowmobile in the fleet. If everybody goes down to Patreon right now and donates $1, I would buy a brand new snowmobile like tomorrow. But I'm gonna ride out the rest of the year on my old white cat, just because that's all I have the money for right now. So no new sled for me this year. Thanks everybody for watching. Bunch of links down below. Thanks to Ride the Moose, who supplied us with some skidoos. Thanks to CKX. Thanks to people who have donated to Patreon to help fund the channel, to keep everything going here. Subscribe if you haven't already. I know you guys have been enjoying videos like this. I have a Yamaha video prepared that I'll probably talk about in the next few days here. But that's it. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next video very soon. Bye everybody.